So give it a 5-second count and go ahead and get started.
Okay. Hey, Debbie. How you doing?
Hi.
Oh, hey, Debbie. How you doing? All right, folks, we are live. I'm really excited to be here with you all once again. My name is Raul Fernandez, Select Board Member and Chair of the Small Business Development Committee. Joined by a number of folks from town staff who you'll hear from, Meredith Mooney, Kara Bruton, Pat Maloney. We also are joined by some guests who I'll introduce in just a bit, as well as Debbie Good-Miller, Small Business Development Committee member and chair of our Chamber of Commerce in Brookline. So welcome to our 7th virtual town hall meeting for Brookline businesses and nonprofit organizations impacted by COVID-19. 7 weeks we've been doing these meetings, and I know you all feel it as much as we do here. We'll continue to be here every Thursday morning at 9 a.m. to deliver important updates and answer your questions in real time. We want these meetings, which are hosted by our Small Business Development Committee, to be relevant and informative for our businesses and nonprofit community during this uncertain time. So please let us know if there are additional topics and issues you'd like us to address at future meetings. Today's meeting will include several updates from economic development staff and a panel discussion about rent relief strategies from our guests Jim and Adam Convisor from Convisor Property Group. Convisor works with a lot of Brookline businesses and property owners. We're looking forward to hearing their unique insights into the issue of rent relief, which is without question one of the biggest issues that our business community is currently facing. On the town side, we don't have a whole lot more to update you on right now. The closures that were in effect the last several weeks have remained in effect. You probably know by now that that all of our schools and libraries will remain closed for the end of the school year. And you have also heard, we'll talk about in just a bit, the governor's recent announcement of the extending non-essential business closures through to May 18th. And so we're looking very closely at that too. At the same time, we are doing our own internal planning for what reopening looks like, what it looks like for our administrative offices in town, but also really excited to engage with you all about what reopening looks like on the business side too. So looking forward to being part of that conversation. Before we dive into today's agenda, I want to do two things. I want to thank the folks at Brookline Interactive Group for their continued support in publicizing, live streaming, and handling a lot of the technical side of making virtual town halls like this work. They've been doing that for us here on these Thursday morning town halls, but for many, many other meetings across town. And so they deserve our sincere gratitude. So thank you, Kathy, and the entire team at BIG. I also want to encourage everyone, there's a holiday coming up, Mother's Day. I want to encourage everyone watching to shop Brookline for all of your Mother's Day gift and celebration needs. We're going to hear more from Debbie Miller from the Chamber on this a little bit later about a special Mother's Day Shop Brookline initiative. So please stay tuned for that. But when you're thinking about the folks you love the most, and you have an option to buy something, please really do consider buying local, buying Brookline. So with that said, I will turn it over to Kara, who's got an announcement about a survey for us.
Great, thanks. So we have a good number of participants on the call today. That's great. It looks like about 27, including the speakers. We want to let everybody know we've been giving you a heads up, but we're going to start launching a series of quick polls through our webpage and also through our business news blast email group. And the reason we're doing this is to inform our discussions in coordination with state officials and also other town departments so that we can understand where best to put additional resources, where we can find them, or support that's needed. If we don't have it, we'll try to find a group or an association that can. The more data that we're able to capture, the better we can serve you. So we're hoping that everybody will not only take this test poll of a couple questions today, but once we launch it in the next week or so, also let your other businesses know, as well as property owners. The main reason why we're doing this in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be focusing on how we can best ramp up to so that businesses can be open as best as possible on time. So with that said, again, we will put a link to the full survey on our resources for businesses page in the next week-ish. And then we'll also post it on the business news flash and social media and our business organizations. So I think Raul is going to launch a preview to that survey with just a couple quick questions. Oh, Raul, you're muted.
Sorry about that. That poll is live right now. You'll see there's just 6 questions there. I'll read off the questions for folks that are at home watching through the live stream so they can follow along. These questions are, for instance, have you recently received an email from the town's business news blast? So just want to get a sense of how the word's getting out there. What type of business do you operate? Nonprofit organization, restaurant, retail, service, other. Third question is your business currently operating or plan to be operating in the next 2 weeks via the following options? And it could be any of them through in-source sales or curbside pickup, online or over the phone offerings, delivery of goods via mail, UPS, business delivery, third-party delivery, etc., or simply not open for business in any capacity. What percentage would you estimate your April 2020 revenue was reduced due to COVID compared to the same time last year? And there are a few options there. And then number 5, tell us about your current business stability. Profits are up, breaking even, losing money, making plans to further reduce the size of my business, and a couple other options that are there as well. And then finally, what do you estimate is the minimum amount of time you'll need in order to open up your business once public health guidelines outlining how to do so safely have been issued at the state or local level? This is a really important question for us all to understand what it'll take for you to ramp up once you understand that, once we're aware of these sort of guidelines being issued and the prohibitions being lifted. So it's a really important question too. While you continue to take that survey, I want to remind everybody that the Q&A function is available for you down there. You'll see it along the list of icons that maybe you have at the bottom of your screen probably. Please do use that to ask any questions of any of our panelists, myself included, our staff, our guest speakers today. Please use that to ask any questions, and you can ask those questions throughout. We may take a break and ask them, or we may to answer them. We may answer them toward the end. But we've been doing this for 7 weeks now, and we've really been good about getting to every question that gets asked. So please do not hesitate to do that. That is your way to engage with the folks here. All right. So we've had this poll open for a couple of minutes. We've got now a good number of responses. I'm going to give you just another 30 seconds to get your responses in. What I'll do is I'll end the poll, and folks that are on will be able to actually see the results of this poll. Just another few seconds before I end. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end this poll now. Ooh, got a couple just under the wire. Well done. Good thing I like to stretch it out a little bit. All right, so now I'm truly going to end this poll so we can see. Oh, one more. All right, fine. So we can see the results here. Okay, and I will share that with you all. So now folks that are on can see the results here. Half of respondents have received the email blast from the town's business news blast. We should probably tell the other half how to sign up for that. In terms of the types of business, a real mix of different types of businesses for the folks that are on right now. Notably, nobody from the restaurant industry on this particular call. So that may inform some of our conversation here, at least for those that have responded to the survey, I should say. A lot of folks operating online delivery, some curbside and in-store. In terms of revenue, how it's changed, no one says revenue's up, unsurprisingly, but significant decreases in revenue for many people, including up to 75 to 100% loss. That's serious. terms of the current business stability. A lot of folks that are currently losing money, a few breaking even, things about making plans for the future. Minimum amount of time, this is the one I was very interested in, needed to open once these the guidelines are out there about reopening. Most number of people said 1 to 6 days notice. Okay, that's heartening. 5 folks said still open as essential business. Great. And then a few smaller numbers, more than 2 weeks for a couple, some other. All right. Meredith, you've been able to capture all that? 1 second. Good to go? All right, Meredith is all set with that. So I'm going to stop sharing this poll. Thank you all for participating. Maybe a good opportunity, as I mentioned, to talk about that business news blast. Did you plan on doing that later, or do you like to do that now?
I'll do it now.
Yep.
Great. So for those of you that don't know about the Business News Blast, if you go on the town's website, you'll see Notify Me, and you can click on News Blast, and it's the first News Blast, Business News Blast. We have about 650 subscribers, but what we're trying to do is gather more and get more people to self-subscribe. We can't sign you up. You need to self-subscribe to that list. There's also a link to it on our business resources page, so you can find it later that way. And of course, you can email Meredith or I if you have any trouble doing so. We are also, that brings me to thinking about, I want to say thank you to our Economic Development Advisory Board. They are in the middle of calling as many property owners, as commercial property owners, as they possibly can. We're especially focusing on property owners where we know that the tenants in those properties, we may not track them because they may not be storefronts, they may be upper level businesses, or they may just be in areas of town where there's less participation in business organizations, like restaurants, for example. Our restaurant community is so busy throughout the year that they tend to not participate in weekly meetings or monthly meetings with business organizations. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that we're going to be able to distribute information to as many businesses as possible, especially before we launch the federal funding, the Community Development Block Grant funding, which will probably still be a couple of weeks away. For those of you interested, you can watch an update and discussion about that by the Select Board. Because it's federal funding, there are, of course, many ties and many restrictions, but we are hoping it will be able to grant around an average of $10,000 to about 20 businesses. That's kind of where we're headed. So it's obviously not enough, but it's one piece that we can do, and we want to make sure that we do that fairly. Another quick announcement, I think everybody here knows that the Paycheck Protection Program opened up again this Monday morning. It's still unclear how useful or how accessible that is for our small businesses. And we have not heard whether the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program from the SBA will reopen. So no news on that. The other thing we probably all know, but just in case, is that the governor extended the business closure order until May 18th. There is an economic reopening advisory board that he has appointed, including a variety of types of businesses. For most here on this call, of note is a bookseller in Nantucket. So if you, most of the reopening guidelines are probably going to be done at the state level. So if you have, burning suggestions that you think the governor needs, my guess would be to call the bookkeeper and the bookseller in Nantucket and email her your thoughts. In the last 2 weeks, the Select Board has considered and discussed taking action on commissioning the delivery fee of places like Grubhub. I won't go into that too much here because it looks like we don't have any restaurants on this call, but links to that discussion are also on our Business Resources webpage. And then finally, we've started a separate page, thanks to Beth at Wild Goose Chase and others who have kind of poked us into getting this started, where there's a page that's just only about how best to reopen. We hope to flesh that out more. We've already had a couple businesses in town raise their hand and say, hey, I can build plexiglass walls, for example. So we're going to start to build out those local resources for you guys. wise, and you can get in touch with us if you have more to add. In that vein, Pat Maloney, who's with us from the Board of Health, you might have seen some of the headlines about other communities where restaurants are allowed to sell groceries. I just love the phone call I had with him earlier this week where Pat basically said, yeah, that makes sense. So Pat, do you want to talk about that quickly? I don't think we have any restaurants on the call, but if you want to talk about that and other resources that you have with you today.
Sure. Yeah, it's something that the health department is open to consider. However, any way we can get food out to the population is a plus. So, and also it helps our food operators. What we just ask, so if anyone wants to pass it on to any food operators, would be we want to vet what the establishment would want to do and just go over like a brief plan review of what you're intending on selling. We're concerned about potentially hazardous items that need refrigeration. So it can be done with some checks and balances, and we support it. So contact the health department via email or call, and we'll get back to any individuals that are interested in doing that.
Great. And I think we're should we take Q&A here, Meredith, or should we jump to Visor and come back to all these questions that are really important that we need to get to later?
Yeah, I guess let's take a couple of quick questions related to this. I think Peter had his hand up.
And just a quick note, while we may have not had anyone complete the survey that was a restaurant owner, there may be folks watching through Big right now who are restaurant owners. So let's make sure that we, that we do speak to those issues too.
Okay, sorry. Moving on. Kara, I think did you have a couple more updates? No. Okay. So another update, we're going to be launching an Open for Business signage initiative. It's a coordinated signage initiative for all Brookline storefronts. This was actually an idea that was raised by Lucia from Tiny Hanger at a virtual town hall a couple weeks ago. Lucia took that idea to the Coolidge Corner Merchants Association, which endorsed the idea, which is great. So the town has hired a graphic designer who's going to be coming up with Sarin Design, which is owned by Annika Sarin, who's actually a member of our Small Business Development Committee. So she's very invested in this project. So we have some initial designs from Annika. It's going to include storefront signage as well as a social media kit. So we're trying to knit together the physical storefronts, which a lot of people can't access right now, along with people's virtual platforms. We're going to have more updates next week about rolling out that initiative and how you'll be able to actually get those signs in your storefronts and download the social media kit. So stay tuned for updates on that. Unfortunately, these signs and those resources probably won't be available until the week of May 11th. So we're going to be missing the mark on the Mother's Day holiday, which I know, especially for a lot of our retailers in town, they were really looking forward and putting a lot of hope into additional sales along with that holiday, and hoping that we would be reopening. But we have Debbie on the line from the Chamber, because the Chamber is going to launch an initiative to encourage people to support Brookline businesses for Mother's Day. So Debbie, do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Thanks, Meredith. This is actually a collaborative effort that we're spearheading just to add a little fun into the effort to get Brookline businesses top of mind for Mother's Day. We want people to think of our local businesses before any other thoughts they might have when they're trying to think of what to get for their moms, whether it's breakfast in bed or plants or books or what have you. We have it all here in Brookline, so we're looking forward to getting that out and into social media and in our newsletters, and you'll be hearing about it very soon.
Great, thank you. So stay tuned for updates on that. Kathy Bisbee from Big, who joins us every week on our virtual town halls. But today she wants to talk a little bit about special business promotion opportunities through Brookline Interactive Group.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to send through the chat the link for Signage. If you have a local business and you'd like to post your business details on our cable channels, you can do that. And we have guidelines for that resource that are available on our Brookline brooklineinteractive.org/COVID-19 page. And we have a really good example here really quick that I can show you just to give you a sense of what one local business did. So you can see here, Refrulo Cafe did this little blurb, and we put that on the cable channel. So we're just airing that as much as possible so that folks who are at home and watching cable television, which a lot of people are telling us they're doing. We have about 19,000 subscribers in Brookline. So we have a very high cable penetration compared to a lot of towns. Folks are watching the channels and seeing information about how to access your business. And I think it's really important to make sure that you're telling people how to access your business, but also how to do so safely, because that's a concern that we're really hearing from consumers right now. So I just wanted to show you that really quickly. And then I also want to mention, I'm going to plug for Debbie Miller and our webinar that's happening tomorrow. We are doing a using storytelling to promote your business. So I have a background in working in local business and small businesses in particular. And we're going to be talking about how to create compelling marketing communications messaging using storytelling as a strategy. And we're going to talk about how that looks during COVID-19, but also before and after COVID-19. So our whole big team, well, 3 out of 4 of us will be there. And we'll be helping you to think about how you can discover stories and also do the production work on your phone to make those stories happen to promote your business.
Great, thank you. All right, so we are now transitioning to our guest panelists today, who are Jim and Adam Convisor from Convisor Property Group. If you spend any time in Brookline, I'm sure you've seen the yellow Convisor signs in lots of storefronts around town. So we're fortunate to have them here today. They're in the unique position where I think they have a 1 foot in the property owner's world as well as 1 foot in the tenant's world. So we're going to turn it over to Adam and Jim, and then we're going to do some Q&A and come back to Pat Maloney and answer some of the questions that people have already raised later on in the virtual town hall. So take it away, Adam and Jim.
Of the virtual town hall meeting, and really appreciate the communication with the town. It's been really helpful. Our company has been around for 15 years, although we've been in the business for about 20 plus years in the retail commercial real estate business. And Brookline is heart and soul for us. I grew up in Brookline. We have a lot of listings there, but our business is in many communities that really ring the Route 128 area from a property listing standpoint. We have about 50 listings, although we anticipate that to go up. Unfortunately, we had enough to work on. And we do both tenant rep work, landlord rep work. Most of our stuff, as I said, is retail. So we really deal with the storefronts and landlords and tenants. We do some office, but it's really sort of a side, and we have some investment sales. Our business from a leasing standpoint is virtually, no pun intended, come to a stop. And so our days are taken up joining you guys at Brookline Town Hall. We're on Newton Needham Chamber of Commerce later today, and we're on with a bunch of other communities. We have a unique advantage in that we're part of a larger platform network of brokerage firms around the country like ours. So we are also almost daily on the phone with our other offices that we are our brother and sister offices around the country, including Toronto, Canada, talking these same issues. Tenants closed, not being able to generate income. If you don't have income, you can't pay rent. Local businesses are particularly affected. The nationals are dealing with it a little differently. It really depends on the size of the credit behind the tenant. But we're talking small business today, but we can get into some of the solutions and discussions that tenants are having with landlords. I think it's important to know that sort of everyone's in this together. And if we want retailers to get back up and running, that there has to be an open dialogue between landlords and tenants and a real discussion. Some tenants are open and operating. Obviously there are some restaurants that have really pushed and done takeout. Some of them are selling groceries, so they are generating some income. And there are some businesses that are actually thriving, believe it or not. Some of the convenience stores, the grocery stores, the pharmacies, they're clearly open and thriving and picking up a business. In that same breath, the cost of their business is going up right now to operate under really tough circumstances with protecting their customers, protecting their employees, and the stress and strain of their hours that they're spending on this. So I think, what we can add is sort of, there's no set solution with regard to the landlord and tenant discussion with how they're resolving rents and non-payment of rents. Obviously tenants, if they can't make money, they can't pay their rents. Every tenant's dealing with it differently. Some tenants, the nationals, for instance, maybe it's Chipotle or Starbucks, they've asked for rent holidays for usually 1 month was what we've seen. And then they have not asked for free rent or a rent holiday. They've asked for 3 to 4 months of rent that is deferred and put back into the deal in some amortized way, whether it's the following year, whether it's over a remaining term. A lot depends on the individual deal. Some tenants may have only 1 year left on a lease, so it's a different situation if you have 1 year left versus 10 years left on a lease. And then we're also seeing some creative solutions right now in 2 instances in larger buildings, larger developments. We have restaurants that have decided, or retailers that have decided, you know what, we were going to plan a renovation and now's a good time. So they're taking this time to close, retool, redesign the store, maybe get a reinvestment. A couple of the instances that we have landlords investing tenant improvement allowance in the tenant's business, and the tenant also matching that tenant improvement allowance. So tenants are saying, all right, I'm going to close, I'm going to renovate, and we're going to re-up for another 5-10 years. I think that could also be a really good solution right now. And I think a lot of people are figuring that out, not for everyone. Obviously a very, very stressful time for everyone. We don't know when we're going to get out of this, and the ramp up is going to be difficult. So I think that's sort of the gist of what we're seeing. I'm happy to answer questions with regard to how you can engage your landlord. But remember, landlords also have mortgages. Most landlords have mortgages, and they have covenants in those mortgages. So they can't just go unilaterally and start changing leases or rent terms because they have to satisfy a debt. Some landlords are getting some relief for debt, or a moratorium period, or a deferment of mortgage payments. But every situation is different. And I think the key is to really not just unilaterally or arbitrarily just not pay rent, but you've got to contact your landlord, discuss what's going on. Also, tenants that are reopening, when we do reopen on the 18th and you start to ramp back up, especially restaurants, a creative way to do it is maybe not pay full rent, because restaurants are going to be asked to open in some sort of abbreviated capacity, right? Whether it's 50% or 25% capacity to accommodate the needs of social distancing. And, one of the solutions we've heard is maybe a percentage rent, covering triple net expenses, CAM and taxes, and then a percentage of sales that meets, that fits within sort of the operating. Most, tenants have a range of occupancy costs that they like to be in. Restaurants, generally 6 to 9% of gross occupancy costs. So I think that there are some creative solutions that tenants can come up with and landlords can come up with. But you've got to open up your books. You got to say what you're doing for sales, where you were before, where you're going. And I think as long as it's an open dialogue and everyone's working together, we can figure out how to get back and up and running. The most important thing is also for landlords to support the tenants to try to get them back up and running. Because if you don't, there's going to be a lot, and there will be a lot of open storefronts. We already see it. We know a lot of businesses are not going to reopen. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
I would add that, we've talked to a lot of tenants. We've talked to a lot of landlords. I think the heartening thing is that I think landlords understand what's going on here. And we've had, like Adam said, very creative responses from them as far as deferring rent, giving rent holidays, being fairly flexible. But the bottom line is that defining the hardship. So how does it impact your business? Some of these tenants are completely shut down. Others, such as Wild Goose Chase or Boston General Store, have emphasized their online presence, and those are businesses that can operate online. How much of the revenue are they collecting right now? Hard to say, but at least they're not completely shut down. Restaurants, we've talked to a lot of restaurants, pizza places, fast food places. Many were open with drive-throughs. Are they doing 10, 20%? I've talked to a pizza guy in Cleveland Circle. He's at about 50%. Auto and Coolidge Corner, they're probably 30, 40% of what they were doing. Of course, they're losing their bar business and losing, but they are an option, and I think people are clamoring and really desiring to do takeout and to try to support these local restaurants. But it's affected everybody, and I think government assistance is a big part of it. Are you getting PPP? Are you getting economic relief from the federal government? Those are issues that are out there that have to be addressed. We've seen some people using security deposit. Okay, can I apply security deposit to some of this rent or spread it out? And just really kind of take a look at the lease and give yourself something that is going to work for the next 12, 18 months, however long it might take to fully recover.
Great. So I think we can, unless Adam and Jim have anything to add, we do have one comment from Liz Linder. And she added, one creative solution I experienced with a landlord in the South End. They gave a 50% rent off for the month of April. Following this, the building had a flood. They are now offering the month of May as being taken out of a security deposit. So, one potential arrangement.
In a lot of instances, the banks are required, the lenders are requiring to put tenants into default, and that's happening a lot, and that's putting a lot of stress on tenants and where they stand. Some of this is just they have to do it, right? Just for protocol. If a tenant's not paying rent, the landlords are protecting their rights. So it's important to understand that the tenants and landlords really have to have open dialogues, because that could put a lot of stress on some of these small businesses when they get put into default, and they're really worried about how they reopen and under what circumstances.
So could we dive a little deeper into that comment? And we've received a lot of phone calls over the past several weeks from business owners who are very apprehensive about initiating those conversations with their landlords or continuing those types of negotiations. So do you have any other tips or best practices that you would recommend for business owners who are feeling anxious about continuing that discussion with their landlords?
I think maybe if they have someone that can help them, certainly if they had a broker that was helping them on the deal, maybe they could engage their broker to have a discussion with the landlord. But I think ultimately the best thing for them to do is to have a direct and open dialogue with their landlord, and the landlords with the tenants. Hopefully the landlords are doing that. Because as I said, we're all in this together, but I think it's really important to share and say, look, I can't operate. This is what my revenue is. This is what I have for reserves, and to be open and honest about the relationship. Unfortunately, there's no formula except I think having that open dialogue. That we have not been down. There's no playbook for this, and every situation is going to be a little different, and every landlord's going to deal with it a little differently. Hopefully, there's compassion going around on everyone's part, but at the end of the day, there's a chain reaction all the way down to the lenders, and so the landlords are under pressure too, they also are answering to their lenders. So I think it's important for tenants to understand that as well, and they're usually, I think there are solutions. We have to get creative, and as I said, I think if landlords are willing to defer rent or build it back into the deal, but again, that could put a lot of strain on a tenant if it does not match their pro forma. So it's important to restructure the deal to allow the tenants to continue. That said, we don't know what it's going to look like on the rebound and what sales are going to be like. So maybe getting creative with percentage rents going forward for the time being until we can get ramped up, it may make sense, because we may say we're open back up, but a tenant is not going to be able to open the door. A lot of people are going to be afraid to go to some of these retailers for the next few months. There's going to be, I know I'm not going to be very comfortable going to a restaurant next month. I'll probably take me a little bit of time before I feel really comfortable getting back into a busy restaurant. But I think if we're all reasonable and use our heads, I think we can figure out some good solutions. But the key is just communicating with the landlords, or engage a broker or your attorney to help you engage the tenant. I think everyone should be accommodating.
And I would add that we've got a couple of tenants who are under construction, and they've been under construction planning to open in the next few months. Obviously, they've been stopped. Their future is going to depend on a lot of things, including the town of Brookline and their ability to get contractors in, to finish the work, to get permits, to get approved, Board of Health, whatever it may be, and in order to try to move forward. And as Adam said, once they do open their doors, well, it's not going to be probably what they expected from the beginning, because they may be limited to the number of people they can have in at one time. These are all things that have to be taken into account, and I think they have to look at that lease and when does their rent commence, how much rent are they going to pay in the outset, how they're going to ramp up, and then what direction are they going to get from the town of Brookline as to what safety protocols are they going to have to implement in order to start to open. So many things that are really unknown at this point.
Great. So going back to that concern with a lot of business owners about having those conversations with their landlords, I think particularly Kara's been getting a lot of calls with people hoping that the town might provide some sort of intervening role or play a role in those discussions between landlords and tenants. So can you share your thoughts on, and I think our position has been, in our experiences, that is not in the best interest of the tenants if the town were to get involved. So do you think you could speak to that a little bit?
I think that, you hear on the state level about, even the federal level, about freezing rents, and, look, every situation is different. And it's very hard to paint it all the same way and put a blanket policy in place. I think that hopefully, landlords, who often can be made out as the bad guy, are typically not the bad guy. I mean, they depend on the tenant as much as that tenant depends on that landlord. The landlords want to pay their mortgages. They want to make their, earn what they need to earn. And I think the smart ones understand that they need to be partner with these tenants to make something work. And these are black swan event. We've never seen this before. So I don't know, Adam, do you have other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tough for the town to sort of mandate. The town can't step in and mandate what landlords and tenants are doing. I think they really have to remain on the sideline for the most part. But I think the town, if they could provide some relief to tenant or deferred maybe or with the landlords, maybe deferring some of the taxes that are all. I know that's a tough position to be in as well, but that's a big part of these rent payments as well. These, especially in Brookline, where taxes are very high and it's a big, huge component of the rents on the retail side. The tenants absorb those costs, and so that if everyone's going to share in it, I mean, how does the town maybe share in that aspect of it, maybe providing some deferment of those payments? But again, the town depends on revenue to function, and so it's a trickle-down effect. But that is all a big component. That those, based on the rents, the taxes could be almost 15, 20% of the rents. So it's a big component of the rent.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that the town has deferred tax payments to the maximum extent feasible by state law. And if the state continues any extensions, I would imagine, although I obviously cannot speak on behalf of the select board, I would imagine we would, continue to turn every dial that we're legally allowed to do. That reminds me that when we've been calling property owners, especially some of our smaller property owners, they're not aware. Just as Adam says, like, what's the town doing with property taxes? Well, we are, and a lot of people don't know that. And so that's been kind of the conversation starting point that our EDAB board members and myself have had with property owners is, meeting them where they're at, making sure that they understand all the resources that are available that will help both them and the tenant.
Great. So does anyone have any specific questions for our Convisor panelists? Let's see here.
Members of the Small Business Development Committee should feel free to weigh in too with any questions or commentary.
And I would just add, as far as Mother's Day go, if you have favorite stores in Brookline that even if their storefronts are closed, look them up online. Boston General Store, I was talking to them. They've been very busy online, not to the extent they normally are with their stores open, but there may be an opportunity you can shop online for your mother or your wife or your daughter or whoever it may be, or maybe buy a gift certificate. So definitely support those local vendors.
Absolutely. I think that was Visor volunteering to help amplify the Chamber's Mother's Day initiative. So I'm sure Debbie will be reaching out to you guys after this.
I'll be in touch.
Great. All right. So I think the questions that we've got here, people are anxious to talk about a potential reopening, especially given the governor's announcement earlier this week. So I think that this is a good time to transition to Pat Maloney from Brookline Health Department. And I just like to say thank you so much to Adam and Jim for taking time out of your Thursday morning to chat with us. We really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Thank you for having us.
Okay. Do we still have Pat?
Yep, I'm here. So good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So yeah, the health department has been quite busy, obviously, during this public health emergency. So all of our staff are involved with the epidemiology of following all the cases and tracing individuals and contacts. So it's all hands on deck. But we're also receiving numerous calls and inquiries from businesses and establishments wanting to know when can they open, what the stages will be. We're still waiting for guidance on that. I've been trying to follow what's going on across the country, and I see many variations. There's phase-in approaches ranging from 3 phases to 5 phases. And who fits into those phases is, I think, what's going to be an important guide for us. So as was mentioned earlier, the state committee that's been put together, if any businesses feel that they should be, they have cause to be put higher up on a list of concern, express that, send that to the committee, because that's what they're looking at. They're sitting in a room and trying to figure out who should be the non-essential ones on phase 2, phase 3, however it rolls out. So I think that's very important. Just to give you some insight, what I'm seeing and what I envision will be coming down the pike are things that we've been seeing across the country. And number one is screening. And it depends on the type of non-essential business that is where we're talking about. You see a difference with a hair salon as opposed to a store selling artwork. So a hair salon is much closer contact. So I suspect we're going to have some barrier protection involved in those activities. What I wanted to just warm everyone up to today, and next week, I'll be happy to do it again, is just some of the things that you might be thinking about of ordering, because these products are on high demand. So the sooner you get orders in, the better for you. So one is screening. So how do we do screening? There'll be probably screening. We're making our food establishments do screening of their staff. And screening is, number one, asking questions. And number two is taking temperatures. Here's a digital thermometer, something that is quite common and inexpensive. I'm not too keen on recommending this because what you have to do after you take a temperature, well, it needs a sheath over it. So when you do multiple people, you have to keep changing those and access the sheaths and what have you. What I like much better are these non-contact thermometers. These are very popular. We're seeing them. You've probably seen them when you watch the news where they're showing in airports and what have you. They're doing it. It's a non-contact device. You just take a temperature, you press a button, and immediately you get the results. And what's nice about this one, if it's within a compliant zone, it's green. and if it's excessive, it turns red. So these are online. If anyone looks to acquire these, I would highly recommend making sure it's designed for human taking temperatures of the human body, because there are devices that look like this that are designed for industrial use. Construction companies, and I see Elias is online. He probably uses it with his motor vehicle checks, where you check if our engine is hot. We don't want those ones. We want ones that are designed for the human body. So make sure you check that. And if it's FDA approved, that's even better. So they're online, and consider that. The other is sanitation. And depending on the type of business that we're looking at, various sanitation protocols will be followed. And how do you achieve that? Well, here's something very common. And, but again, they're tough to get. But these are sanitation wipes that you can use to wipe down your terminals. Everybody's using credit cards. We try to have all our restaurants do where you could do it online, so you won't have to be involved with that. But once we open our retail stores, there'll be contact and use of the devices where you run your credit card through. So wiping it down between use is good with something like that. There are sanitizers out. Town hall and all our public buildings. Our custodial staff are going through with particular sanitizers, wiping down high contact surfaces. We have guides on that, and we'll be continuing to issue additional guides for all of our establishments. Economic development has been great with getting the word out for us on this. So when we put it together, I'm sure you'll be getting it through emails. One thing about sanitizers, though, know what type you're using. What we found some establishments have been doing is inappropriately mixing sanitizers that aren't compatible. So in our guides, we'll be issuing information. This one is a quaternary ammonia sanitizer. It's not a bleach-based sanitizer, and you don't want to mix the two, because bleach and ammonia are dangerous. So quaternary ammonia is a good one to use. And then, of course, the hand sanitizer. This is, again, in high demand. Let's start putting in your orders, because it's going to be something that your customers will be expecting and all operators should be having. And depending on the business, as you see, all our food establishments now, we make them have the face coverings. So that's something, put in your orders for that. I like these because they easily wrap around your ears and give you an appropriate coverage. These aren't N95 masks. Those are for the level of persons in the healthcare industry, but these are good surgical face coverings that you can get in boxes such as this. And the last is the gloves. They come in just like you're getting them in a tissue box, and they come out, and that's something that establishments will be looking to have. So depending on the type of business it is and what type of service they provide, that's where the guidance will vary. A hair salon will be much different from a retail small products goods store. A gym, a health club, much different from another establishment. So those are the protocols. We're going to be quite busy with formulating and getting the word out. Hope that helps.
Yes, I think that was very helpful. I'm anticipating people are going to have a lot more questions. Before we get to those, could you provide a little insight into the flow of communication between the different levels of government? We talked about Governor Baker assembled an economic reopening task force, which is going to be developing some guidelines. So what's the communication like from that level to the town?
Yeah, so we're having weekly meetings, sometimes multiple times a week, with various entities in public health. And that information gets funneled from the governor's office to the state health department. And there's a whole group of local health departments that are continuing. I'll have 3 meetings a week with these groups, and we bounce off each other what was just received and how we interpret it. And that's the big thing. A guidance comes down from the state, and then we have 12 different interpretations of it. So funneling those interpretations down. And I know the select board, I'm sure you'll agree with that. We see these guidance and then we're all, trying to figure out what is the intent. So we're trying to be consistent. We're trying to be on the same page because that's important. So that's how it rolls out. And when the information we dispense, it's going to be our interpretation of what we understand the intent is. Sometimes we tweak it a little bit where we feel they may have dropped the ball on something and we feel this is a better public health protection measure. So we'll give guidance in that regard and the reason for it.
Great, thank you. Going back to a question from Brooke, I think this is Brooke from Mint Julep. She asked, how likely is the May 18th opening date in your opinion?
It's a date that's targeted. Things have been changing. Obviously, this is a new date that has come up. I know there's a real push to try to give guidance by that date so we can, hit the road running. So that's a wild card, but hopefully it'll be held.
Okay.
And then with that would be phase-ins of essential businesses and where they fall in the phase-in. Phase 1 will be X, phase 2 will be another group, and phase 3 will be another group.
Okay. So Debbie Miller, Executive Director of the Chamber, has pointed out that a lot of businesses would like a little bit more guidance around how to keep their merchandise safe to the touch and how to encourage customers to maintain social distance and wear masks. And then maybe sort of related to that, you'd referenced that you're anticipating health department will be sharing a guide at some point. Do you anticipate that answers to those types of questions would be included in that guide? And when do you think people could expect to have that by?
Yeah, it's essential that we dispense the information, and that's where economic development helps us with that. Also, part of it is signage. We find signage is key here. So as people are entering establishments, they're advised what that expectation is on entering. You'll see when you go to the grocery stores now, it'll say you must have a mask on entering, and social distancing signs are throughout. So I'm hearing that, and we'll make sure we address this as best we can. Understand we're flat out, and we can't make a sign for every type of business. And I've seen some businesses make some dynamite signs on their own. Some with some comedy associated with it under the stressful time. So as long as it's meeting the intent, that's great. But we'll definitely take note of what was just recommended and make sure we incorporate that in our guidance document.
And do we expect that the local guidance document would probably come after that May 18th date we now have?
I'm hoping we get some warm up as to where we're going so that we could say, all right, phase 1 establishments, this is, you'll qualify for this, and here's what you need to follow for that opening date. And phase 2, here's what you need to follow. So
okay.
I'm hoping we get it in time that we can build an appropriate guidance for everyone.
Great. And at some point, Kathy had posed the question about the brands of the particular products that you recommended, and we can circle back to that later. But
yeah, we already have a list of sanitizers that are recognized and approved. We'll make sure we'll get you that list so
perfect.
You can share it with others. Okay. All sanitizing products have to be approved by the EPA. So there is a list. And we're getting a lot of inquiries. People want to use more green products. So they've made a list of green products associated with what can be used for sanitizing and disinfection.
That's good to hear. I remember Raul saying several weeks ago as the new restrictions were coming in, everything that we used to do that was good for the environment is now bad as we're kind of battling this virus situation. So it's good to hear that green cleaning products are a priority. So we have a question from an anonymous attendee for non-hair salon/gym businesses. Do you anticipate regulations where we would have to take the temperature of the public? If someone had a fever, what would happen? I worry about privacy/discrimination issues.
Well, we're in the business of public health, and if somebody has a fever, that should be attended to. We're not saying you're recording who that customer is or what have you, but you shouldn't be letting them in if that's for that particular business. Again, I don't have the standards yet, but what I'm seeing in other states for hair salons and gyms, they are screening people by a quick temperature, so they know we're not compromising all the hard work we did to get this place open by allowing somebody who's possibly sick. So, just a quick temperature and say, I'm sorry, you should go see your doctor, see what's going on here.
We have a suggestion from Liz Linder. What if the town, in concert with the state and health department, offer a safe procedure training for open businesses with certification and signage to note that indicates safe operating procedures that are being followed by said business?
We've been getting that suggestion a lot. That's a monster. We are flat out, and I know our health commissioner has done a couple of vignettes with Big on some of the guidance how to put on a mask. Maybe that's going to be put together. I'll make sure that I tell my colleagues at the state, if you could put something that is a guidance that will reach out to everyone. But I'll think about that. I'll see how we can do it. We have interns that are helping us with some of our workload here, and so let's see what we could possibly do. But that's tough because you want to build it right, you want to present it right, and it's not as easy as it may sound.
All right, I'm not seeing any hands raised, so we'll go to a question from Haley Greenberg from the Makery. She wanted to know if there's a list available of all restaurants that are selling groceries for curbside pickup.
I think that's maybe, yeah, Pat, you don't have a list yet, do you?
No.
Yeah, I think this is something that we're just rolling out, and I would recommend that we continue to build that out with the Chamber's open for business list.
Great. So we have a couple of other questions that are not directly related to health department topics. Are there any other questions for Pat? Oh, Kara has one.
Well, there's one that I'm catching from Jen from earlier. She's asking a more general question. She says, for discussion about opening and following other companies in other states that are opening, she's most concerned about businesses and employees being penalized if they want to open slower or safer than is being allowed. And related to that question, I have heard from some restaurants in Brookline who are hearing from kind of either restaurant associations or sister companies in Boston who are advising them to stay open so that they don't have to be recertified or re-inspected by health inspectors. And so maybe you could talk about, if a restaurant is operating at a loss, or if they want to delay an opening in order to make sure their own procedures are safe, how long can they, be closed before requiring any recertification?
Yeah, that's something we're looking at and we're trying to figure out. I anticipate a heavy workload for our staff with the phase-in approach and going in and assuring the public that this establishment is safe to reopen. We're looking at possibility of having our MRC and our CERT team assist us to increase our numbers. So we're looking at that. That's going to be challenging, but we are planning now to address it because we don't want to be holding establishments up. They've been, closed for some time, and whatever we can do to get them up and running, we're going to figure that out how best we can. Obviously, the level of hazard that a establishment has will require more hands-on approach, but something simple, just with a guidance document, would be easy. So we're aware of that challenge. I wouldn't say, nobody should be penalized. I've seen that in the other states that opened, much sooner than they really should have. And some states decided not to, some establishments decided not to open. And yeah, that's, until you're comfortable and you're safe with what you want to do, I see that as appropriate. I couldn't see penalizing somebody for that.
Okay, we have another question from Sue Stein at Fire Opal in Coolidge Corner. Will there be local testing available for store owners and staff? We want to ensure customers that the store is safe once we open.
I'm assuming you're referring to testing for COVID-19, and that's a tough one because their testing is available, but it's limited to persons who are either essential or have been diagnosed as needing to be tested. So I know at the national level they're looking at that, and I know our health commissioner is looking, how can we, if we had to achieve that, do more testing of everyone? But that's a challenge right now. You could imagine that's a tough one. Right now I see the screening as a key. That's doable. But as something may change, and we may hear that there'll be more resources to assist with screening, and then we'll definitely get that information out. So all this is still early in the works. I haven't seen other states mandating you got to be tested to open your business back up, restaurants and what have you. It's more screening. Do you have a temperature? Do you meet the criteria? And the criteria has changed. It went from 3 elements that they were looking for: the fever, the sore throat, and and now it's at 6. So with aches and some other items that the CDC has added. So we'll put that into our information so everybody has a little checklist so they know what they're looking for.
Great. So I'm not seeing any more questions specifically for Pat or hands raised. So I want to be respectful of your time because I know that you are in high demand these days, more so than usual. So we're coming up a little past 10, so I want to be respectful of your time. And but hopefully we'll have you back again at next week's virtual town hall to take questions as well.
Definitely. This is a great resource. This is a great way of getting the word out, because I could tell all these individuals will spread the word. So you could count on me assisting if you want me to participate with. And then as I learn more, we'll share that. So warming everyone up to what to expect for that opening day.
Great.
All right, guys, thanks so much. And you're all working so hard. I appreciate it. Hang in there.
Bye, Pat. Thank you. All right. So just to close out the last 3 remaining questions we have in the Q&A. So Peter Crossley had a comment updating everyone on his experience in getting a Paycheck Protection Program loan through East Boston Savings Bank, and just wanted people to be aware of East Boston Savings Bank as a resource and responsive potential lender, and that you are not precluded from applying through more than one institution. So thank you, Peter. And then an anonymous attendee said most small retail businesses are fully active with online shops. Please make sure those web addresses are linked to all town websites. The kiosks could be useful to promote before Mother's Day. So the Brookline Chamber, which is an amazing partner to the town's economic development division, has been compiling a list of all businesses that are open with links to websites, social media pages, phone numbers, and more information about how they're open. So we do have a link to that chamber site on our resources page. And we're looking for ways to make better use of the kiosks in our commercial areas to promote small businesses during this difficult time. And then, Kara, do you want to respond to Jen Mason's comment?
Yeah, so Jen, if you're still on the line, maybe you can repeat this question for us. Is she still with us?
Yes.
Yep.
Allowed to talk.
Perfect.
Hi, Jen.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, so you had mentioned something in your update, Kara, about dealing with Grubhub or fees for Grubhub, and you said there weren't restaurants on the line, but we are we're sort of restaurant. We're not doing restaurant stuff right now, but we do use Mercado, which uses Grubhub and also has its own delivery fee. So I'd be interested in knowing what that information was.
Oh, great. Okay, great. I will send you a direct email offline, and also for everybody to know, again, on our business resources page, right at the beginning, right after, you'll see some translation services that kind of catches your eye. And then there's kind of, it says jump to, and there's kind of 5 different sections. The last section that we added says something about resources for planning to open or something like that. And on that link is a bunch of information that we talked about today, as well as information about the select board investigating the commission fees. And Jen, just real quick while we have you, is the high rate of commission fees, is that a business concern for you as well?
I mean, it's enough of a business concern that we created a secondary online portal that just, it's 9%, which is not as much as our caviar, which we took off entirely because, which is our meals. Because that one's, I can't remember, that one's like 20%. It's a large amount, and so we created it, and so I'm running 2 different online ordering and our telemonger, so you can call in and shop, just to try to give people options that make us more. I mean, we are busy, but we're not making any of the high margin things like the restaurant would make on alcohol.
Right.
So our, remaining people are slammed. So I'm just trying to find as many ways as possible to keep that margin. So if we're making money, that it's actually money coming in and not money going back out.
Mm-hmm.
So
The
interesting.
Yeah, no, thank you. The Massachusetts Restaurant Association is kind of leading the charge, as you can imagine, for local municipalities to act at a local level, but obviously together, because if a community like Brookline were to cap fees, obviously the immediate effect might be that those delivery services might just drop Brookline altogether, Right. So we are working with our adjacent communities, and many city councils, individuals are talking about it and figuring it out. And Debbie, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you want to talk about the outreach that you're doing with restaurants?
Yes, sure. Actually, Jen, we should probably talk after this, and anybody else online who uses these services. We've sent out a survey to as many restaurants as we have email addresses for, trying to get feedback so that we can write a letter of recommendation to our state reps and recommend that there be a cap on these delivery services, since they're taking such a huge chunk out of the narrow margins that they already have. So if anybody uses these services, hasn't received this, please get in touch with me, Debbie at brooklinechamber.com, and I can send you that survey.
I want to add something to this too, just to represent the select board's discussion on this from this past Tuesday night. There was we were united in our belief that these fees, or at least some of the fees that are being charged, are just way too high, and leveling on gouging, and that they're way too high, not just during this really important time where some businesses are struggling to stay afloat, but they're just way too high every day. And what we endorsed was a regional approach where we'd work, as Kara mentioned, with other local communities to push for state legislation that would address this in some meaningful way. So I know that Select Board Member Ben Franco from our team is going to be working on that as well on our behalf, and we'll continue to push. But there were a lot of comments by select board members about how unfair this seemed, especially now. And there have been, I would say, whenever you see as someone who's buying something, you see that the delivery fee is zero, know that someone else is paying that fee, and it's usually the business owners that are paying that fee. So to the extent possible, to encourage, if it's a safe option for you, curbside pickup, which eliminates the need for those delivery fees, while we continue to push for legislation. Even if, as Kara mentioned, even if this was something that we could do alone, we'd still want to adopt the regional approach. But the fact of the matter is right now that Brookline, the select board, and we don't even think town meeting has the ability at this point to cap those fees at a certain number. This is something that's going to require state legislation, and we'll continue to push for that.
All right, so I'm not seeing any more questions or comments, so I think we might be at the end of our meeting.
Yeah, so let me just, as we close out, let me make one more pitch for our safety net fund. I want to make sure that you all know that this fund is available to anyone who lives, works, or goes to school in Brookline. And that works part does include business owners who may own businesses in Brookline but not reside in Brookline, as well as employees who may work in Brookline but not reside in Brookline. That funding is available to help with rent support, utilities, food, all these personal needs, and other, sort of acute financial needs. Folks can reach out to 617-277-8107. That's the phone number if you need support. For those who are able and willing and can support the fund itself to give to the fund, you can go to brooklinecommunity.org and you can give to support that fund. The other thing I'll mention is that on Monday at 1 p.m., we're doing a town hall. It's the town of Brookline in collaboration with the Brookline Community Foundation, the Brookline Center, and supported by the Brookline Interactive Group, are holding a virtual town hall where we'll be talking about that fund. The town to date has contributed $175,000, and Brookline residents have contributed about $400,000. Well, residents and others, I'm sure, have contributed about $400,000 to this fund. As Kara mentioned, that next round of CDBG is coming around. I'm hoping we're able to contribute even more to that. That said, the need is really great out there right now, as I know you all know. And so the extent at which we can continue to support that, I'd encourage that. And if you can join us on Monday at 1 o'clock, just go to the Brookline calendar. You'll be able to find all the details about how to join. And you can just, if you want to join and ask questions, there'll be a Zoom link. But if you want to just watch, it's brooklineinteractive.org/live. And it will also appear on the Brookline Interactive Group stations on RCN and Comcast. That's Monday at 1 o'clock. I hope you'll join. But most importantly for you all, please know that that is a resource. It's an actual financial resource for those folks who need it most. It's available regardless of documentation status. And I hope that you'll avail yourselves of it if you do need. That's why it's there. We're here to help. So we'll continue to host these calls. If it's Thursday at 9 o'clock, it's the Small Business Development Committee virtual town hall. So we'll see many of you next week, and please do spread the word so we can have many more. Thanks, everybody. Take care.